Brad Stevens just gave us a masterclass in honesty, clarity, and maybe a little heartbreak if you're a Boston Celtics fan. The man spoke like someone who's been through the highs, understands the lows, and is staring down the reality of what the Celtics are about to face. There were 3 quotes in particular that stood out. One where he laid out his reasoning, one that hit like a punch to the gut, and one that honestly might go down as his most refreshingly honest quote ever. Let's get into all of it. So let's start with the reality. The second apron in the NBA's new collective bargaining agreement is not just a theoretical line teams want to avoid. It's real, it's brutal, and it's changing everything. Brad Stevens didn't dodge that. In fact, he leaned right into it. He said it straight up. The second apron is the reason the recent trades happened. That's it, point blank. The financial penalties, the basketball consequences, they're real, and they forced Boston's hand. And let's be real when you hear him talk about the guys they gave up. Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are players who brought value, identity, toughness, and elite-level basketball. He called Drew a Hall of Famer, and that's not some empty praise. He meant it. Drew made a huge impact in Boston in a short amount of time. Brad talked about how everyone involved knew the score. They all understood this might be a one-year run. Holiday's people, Porzingis people, the players themselves, they were told ahead of time. This was a calculated risk. And yeah, it stings. It stings because Celtics fans were just getting used to this core. It felt like a championship window was wide open. But the rules have changed. The second apron makes it almost impossible to keep stacking talent while avoiding devastating consequences. Brad even said, these are not easy trades to make. You could hear it in his voice. These were personal decisions, hard calls, but they were necessary. Now some people thought maybe Boston was ducking the tax for ownership reasons, that it was just about saving money. But Brad cut that narrative down quick. He said it clearly. Avoiding the repeat attacks wasn't the priority. The priority is preserving flexibility. It's about future picks, maneuverability, and the long-term sustainability of the roster. That's a much bigger goal than just shaving. Dollars off the books this year. So what's the plan? Well, let's look at the situation. Jason Tatum's going to miss a significant portion of the upcoming season. Maybe most of it. Brad says he's making good progress, but there's no rush. No pressure. When Tatum returns, the expectation is that he comes back fully healthy, not rushing to contribute at 70%. And honestly, that makes sense. If you're Boston, you're not playing for a title this year. You're not pushing chips to the middle. You're playing the long game. This season has all the signs of a strategic reset. But here's where it gets fascinating. The Celtics are not calling this a rebuild. Brad refuses to use that word. He says it's a build, or at worst, a retool. And that's important because it tells us everything about how Boston's front office is approaching this chapter. You've still got Jaylen Brown, you've still got Derek White, you've got some youth, and you've got Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla still focused on putting together a team that competes every night. It's not a fire sale, it's not a tank. It's a recalibration. Brad also opened up about their approach in free agency and the kind of players they're targeting. They're not out here hunting for stars. They're looking for undervalued guys, fringe rotation pieces, maybe someone who never got a fair shot. The Luka Garzas of the world. Players who bring toughness, size, or a specific skill set and who won't cripple the cap sheet. These are the guys who might round out the roster around Brown, White, and eventually Tatum. But let's be honest here. On paper, Boston's front court looks rough. Very rough. And that leads us into what might be my favorite Brad Stevens quote ever. When asked about the bigs on the roster, he didn't sugarcoat it. He said, we're going to find out. That's it. That was the answer. He talked about how they had the luxury last year of having Luke Corner and Neemias Queta as their third and fourth bigs guys who were actually better than their roles. But now those guys are gone. And what's left? Some question marks. He mentioned Garza again, talked about his physicality, his rebounding, and his ability to score. But let's face it, Luka Garza is not known as a defensive stalwart. He's got size, sure, but he's not the most mobile big. He's going to have to prove he can hold his own on switches and not get hunted every time down the floor. And then there's Neemias Queta, raw, big body, decent rim protector, but still developing. Brad even brought up Amari Williams, another big body with upside. But again, none of these guys are proven. Then Brad dropped a line that I think every Celtics fan should remember. He said, on paper, this is not a group that people will single out as our strongest position. He knows the front court is thin, it's unproven, it's borderline shaky. But then he followed it up with something that actually made me smile. Prove me wrong, kids. Man, if that doesn't sum up where the Celtics are right now, I don't know what does. This is a prove-it year. Not just for the young players, but for the entire franchise. A test of scouting, development, and patience. Now, here's where it gets a little more interesting. Brad hinted at some potential moves. Not right now, but maybe during the season. Maybe December, January, trade deadline. He talked about using contracts. Like Simons or Niang packaging those with picks and going deep sea fishing for a legit big. And that would make sense. Maybe they go into the season with what they have, see who develops, and if it's not working, they pivot. It's not a desperate move. It's calculated. Again, patience is the play here. Financially, Brad also knows where the Celtics stand. There's a slim path to getting under the first apron, and if they pull that off, they regain access to the full mid-level exception. Now, that could be huge. It gives them a little more flexibility in free agency. Maybe they use part of it. Maybe they find a veteran who still has some juice left. Maybe they make a small splash. But make no mistake, this season is not about maximizing wins. This is not a 55-win squad. This is not a top 2 seed. This is a team that if things go right, maybe wins 46, 47 games and lands somewhere in the middle of the pack in the East. That's not a disaster. That's a team that competes, that stays relevant, and that gives their young players valuable reps. That's a foundation. And that brings us to Brad's final quote, the one that might hit the hardest. When asked about expectations for the season, he didn't talk about rings or parades. He said, compete like hell to win the next game. That's the motto. That's the mindset, one game at a time. That's not the language of a championship contender. That's the language of a team grinding its way through a transition. But there's something pure about that. Something admirable. Brad isn't pretending the Celtics are something they're not. He knows this team has taken a step back. He knows they're light in the front court. He knows Tatum's injury changes everything. But he's also not waving the white flag. He believes in the guys who are still here. He believes in building, not rebuilding. And he made it clear that there's still a North Star, championships. They're just taking the scenic route this time. And honestly, that might be the smartest approach in this new NBA landscape, with the second apron looming like a storm. Cloud teams can't afford to stay aligned forever. The days of keeping a loaded roster together for 7-8 years, they're over. The league wants parity. The league wants movement. And Brad Stevens is one of the first GMs to say, fine, we'll adjust. We'll evolve. So buckle up, Celtics fans. This season is going to look different. It's going to feel different. But that doesn't mean it's meaningless. This is the beginning of something new. Maybe it's a slow build. Maybe it's a bridge year. But the DNA of the Celtics, defense grit competitiveness, it's still there. It's just wearing a different suit. What makes this season even more fascinating is that it's not just a wait for Tatum to come back year. This isn't a temporary injury sideline story. It's a systemic shift. It's about navigating the NBA's new era of penalties, cost control, and long-term positioning. Brad Stevens isn't just the president of basketball operations now. He's essentially running a balancing act between ambition and restraint. That's not easy, especially not in a city like Boston, where the fan base expects banners, not band-aids. And yet Brad's tone suggests something deeper. He's not panicking. He's not making desperate moves. He's fully aware of how narrow the Celtics' margin is now. They went all in last year. They pushed every chip to the middle of the table with the hope that a championship would justify everything. The contracts, the tax bill, the fragile roster construction. It didn't work out. And now they're feeling the hangover. But again, there's no shame in that. Look around the league. The Warriors, they paid for their dynasty with a bloated payroll and a one-way ticket to the second apron. The Clippers, same story. The Bucks aging fast and capped out. It's not that the Celtics failed. It's that they tried to ride the wave before the rules changed. And now they're recalibrating quicker than most. Let's talk about the timeline. Brad said something subtle but telling. He hinted that in 2 or 3 years, this core, Tatum, Brown, White, might not be here. Not because the team doesn't believe in them, but because the timelines won't align anymore. By then, Jalen will be 30 when Tatum will be 30, and the next contending window might belong to another roster, another era. That's when, according to Brad, the Celtics will cash out. That's when they trade the franchise pillars for youth, picks, and cap space. So in a weird way, this is the holding pattern. The Celtics are flying at altitude, waiting for the next runway to open. They're not landing yet, but they're not taking off either. And that's the key. You don't panic at cruising speed. You conserve fuel, you stay alert, and you wait for your chance. Now, back to the bigs for a second, because this is probably the biggest X factor for Boston. Garza might get the starting nod just by default. He's got experience, he's got a physical presence, and he's hungry. This is exactly the opportunity he's been waiting for, and the Celtics know that. That's why they targeted him. He's cheap, he's motivated, and he doesn't mind doing the dirty work. The downside, defense, but the upside, energy, scoring, rebounding. Then there's Nimi Quater, still raw but intriguing. There's a world where he figures it out, sharpens his footwork, improves his lateral quickness, and becomes a legit rim protector. But that world isn't guaranteed. It's speculative. Same goes for Amari Williams. He's got tools, but tools don't build houses unless someone teaches you how to use them. Brad also threw out Xavier Tillman's name. He's more of a forward, undersized for a center, but he can flex in that role in a pinch. It's going to be a front court by committee, and that's not usually a recipe for dominance. But it's what they've got. The strength of this team will have to come from elsewhere, and that's where Jaylen Brown and Derek White step in. This is their team now. This is the season where Jaylen has to show he's more than a co-star. He has to lead. He has to carry. And honestly, he might be ready. He played a secondary role for so long, always in Tatum's shadow, always the other guy. But now he gets to control the narrative. The Celtics will go as far as Jaylen takes them. His consistency, his decision-making, his leadership, it all matters more than ever. Derek White, meanwhile, is the unsung hero who's about to become a household name. His defensive instincts, his shooting touch, his ability to control pace, he might become Boston's most important player this season. Don't be shocked if he averages over 20 points per game. The opportunity is there, and so is the skill set. It's his time. And then you have the role players, the clearance rack additions, as Brad might call them. Guys like Jaden Springer, Delano Banton, maybe even Gonzalez or Jordan Walsh if they break through. These are the unknowns, the wild cards. Every season has a surprise or two. Someone always emerges. The question is whether Boston finds that diamond in the rough before the season slips away. Now, Summer League becomes a real evaluation window, not just for player development, but for system tweaks. Brad mentioned that Joe Mazzulla and the coaching staff have some wrinkles they're going to test in Vegas. That could mean zone defenses, different pick and roll coverages, or maybe a big man by committee rotation that's built on matchup flexibility. This is the lab. This is where they start building the blueprint for the regular season. And make no mistake, Joe Mazzulla's under pressure too. Last year, he coached a championship caliber roster. This year, he's got a patchwork group and a fan base expecting miracles. Can he adapt? Can he develop talent? Can he win ugly games with a roster that might not be elite anymore? We're about to find out. And it's going to define his tenure in Boston. But here's something else to remember. The Celtics don't have to bottom out. That's the difference between a rebuild and a retool. A rebuild means trading everyone tanking hard and praying for ping pong balls. A retool means staying competitive, giving your young guys real reps and pivoting when the time is right. That's the plan here. And maybe it works. Maybe Garza surprises people. Maybe Jaylen plays like an MVP candidate. Maybe Derek White becomes a star. Maybe one of these young wings becomes a legit rotation guy. Maybe Brad finds a way to flip a couple of contracts into a solid big at the trade deadline. There are a dozen maybes, but that's what this year is about. Exploration, development, patience. There's also a long-term gamble in play. The Celtics are trying to preserve their asset pool. All of it. Their picks, their swaps, their exceptions. Because when the time comes, whether that's next summer or the summer after, they want to be ready to strike. Ready to package those assets for the next disgruntled superstar. Ready to hit reset with power, not desperation. And that's smart. You can't rush that moment. You have to wait for it. And when it comes, you need the ammo. And don't forget, the Tatum factor. He's still the franchise cornerstone. Still a top 10 player when healthy. Still just 27. But he's not Superman. He can't carry the franchise if the roster around him collapses. That's why this year is so important. The Celtics need to show him that there's still a plan. That organization knows what it's doing. Because in a couple years when his next contract comes into play, those decisions will matter. Continuity matters, direction matters, players want to know the front office is competent. That's why Brad's transparency was so important. He didn't hide from the truth. He admitted this team isn't perfect. He acknowledged that expectations have shifted. He admitted the front court is shaky, but he also reinforced belief. Belief in the process, belief in the people, belief in what's being built. So this is what a transition year looks like in the modern NBA. It's not tanking. It's not recklessness. It's deliberate, strategic. You find out what you've got. You test your depth. You bet on development. You manage the cap. You position yourself for flexibility. And you stay competitive along the way. That's what Boston is doing. This isn't a collapse. It's a controlled descent followed by a plan to climb back up. And honestly, that's how smart franchises stay relevant. You don't panic. You don't chase headlines. You don't mortgage the future for short-term comfort. You build, you grow, you adapt. So if you're a Celtics fan wondering what to expect this year, here's the answer: expect effort. Expect growth. Expect some frustrating losses and a few thrilling wins. Expect Jalen to be aggressive. Expect Derek White to shine. Expect the young guys to get real minutes. Expect the front court to be a work in progress. Expect Joe Mazzulla to try things, to learn on the fly, to take risks. And most of all, expect the Celtics to stay true to who they are, a franchise that never stops building. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers are swirling around the NBA as the Boston Celtics reportedly eye a major shakeup that could send shockwaves through the league. Rumors are intensifying that the Celtics might be orchestrating a blockbuster trade involving two prominent names, Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. Though nothing has been officially confirmed, insiders suggest Boston is keen on revamping its roster in a bid to reclaim its championship pedigree, and this potential deal could be a crucial part of that strategy. The Celtics, a team known for their rich history and competitive spirit, seem poised to make bold moves this offseason. Jrue Holiday, an experienced guard known for his tenacious defense and clutch playmaking, has been linked to a possible trade. To Boston, his ability to control the tempo and contribute on both ends of the floor makes him a highly valuable asset for any team looking to solidify its backcourt. Holiday's leadership and versatility could be just what the Celtics need to complement their existing core and add more balance to their lineup. On the other side of this rumored transaction is Kristaps Porzingis, a towering forward with a unique blend of shooting range and shot-blocking prowess. Porzingis has had his share of ups and downs with the Celtics, but his potential to stretch the floor and protect the rim is undeniable. Should this deal come to fruition, Boston could be signaling a shift in their front court dynamics, potentially pairing Porzingis with other stars to form a formidable inside-outside combination. The Celtics management appears motivated to shake things up after a season that, while promising, left fans hungry for more. The buzz around this possible trade suggests they are exploring every avenue to upgrade their roster and position themselves as serious title contenders once again. The infusion of Holiday's grit and Porzingis' versatility could provide Boston with a new identity, one that blends defensive intensity with offensive firepower. Of course, trades of this magnitude are complex and hinge on multiple factors, including salary cap considerations, team chemistry, and long-term strategy. Yet the very fact that such rumors are circulating indicates that the Celtics are not content to stand still. The franchise's history is one of evolution and bold decisions, and his potential move fits that narrative perfectly. As fans and analysts eagerly await confirmation or denial, the speculation alone has already ignited a fresh wave of excitement around Boston's future. Whether Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis will indeed be swapping jerseys in the near future remains to be seen, but one thing is clear: the Celtics are actively exploring options to reinvent themselves and chase glory once more. Stay tuned as the NBA offseason promises plenty of surprises, and Boston's rumored shakeup might just be the headline story everyone will be talking about. That's it for this update.